The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited the planet Violar Prime. Inside, representatives from 40 different species sat in their specialized environments. Some needed water tanks. Others required extremely cold temperatures. A few could only survive in thick clouds of methane gas. But today, they all shared the same emotion: fear. Ambassador Thelric stood at the center podium, his thin frame trembling slightly. His species, the Valarians, looked like tall insects with translucent wings and large compound eyes. When he spoke, his voice was soft and musical, translated instantly into every language present. "The Krathis swarm has taken another colony," he announced. "That makes 40 worlds lost in 6 months. 40 worlds where millions of our people lived, worked, and raised their young. Now those worlds are empty husks, stripped of all biological matter." A wave of distressed sounds filled the chamber. Clicks, whistles, and electronic tones mixed together in a symphony of despair. No species present had ever faced such a threat. In the 10,000 years since the council formed, they had known peace. Wars were fought with words and trade agreements, not weapons. Violence was something from ancient history, before civilization dubbed the Krathis swarm changed everything. They appeared from dark space 5 years ago, a species that existed only to consume and reproduce. They showed no interest in communication, no ability to negotiate. They simply ate everything organic they found and moved on to the next world. Moralen, the lead scientist of the council, floated forward in his suspension sphere. His gelatinous body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as he addressed the assembly. "Honored delegates, our combined fleets cannot stop them. The swarm breeds faster than we can destroy their ships. They have no fear, no sense of self-preservation. When we damage one vessel, 10 more take its place." "Then what do you propose?" asked a delegate whose species resembled floating jellyfish. "Do we simply wait for them to consume us all?" Moralen's patterns shifted to show determination. "There may be another option. 3 cycles ago, we discovered an ancient station in the Void Sector. It belonged to the Precursors, the civilization that existed before any of us evolved. Inside, we found a device. A beacon." Interested murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Precursors were legendary, a species so advanced that even their ruins contained technology the Council could barely understand. Any discovery from them was significant. "What kind of beacon?" Thelric asked, leaning forward. "A communication device," Moralen explained. "But unlike any we have seen. Our analysis suggests it can transmit signals across dimensional barriers, perhaps even to parallel realities. The precursor text we found with it mentions something called the furnace zones, regions of space too, hostile for most life. We believe they use this beacon to contact species that evolved in such environments, beings powerful enough to survive conditions that would destroy us." The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates were excited by the possibility of finding help. Others were terrified of what might answer such a call. The discussion went on for hours, but eventually, desperation won. The swarm was coming. They had no other options. 2 weeks later, Moralen stood in the ancient station with a team of scientists and engineers. The beacon sat before them, a crystalline structure 3 meters tall that hummed with unknown energy. They had spent days preparing, inputting coordinates toward the regions marked as furnace zones in the precursor database. "Are we certain about this?" asked one of the engineers, a small creature covered in soft fur. "We don't truly understand what this device does. What if we're making a terrible mistake?" Moralen's patterns showed uncertainty, but his voice was firm. "The swarm will reach the inner colonies within a year. After that, the core worlds. If we do nothing, we face extinction. Whatever answers this call, it cannot be worse than that." He activated the beacon. The crystal pulsed once, twice, then exploded with light. Energy surged through the station, making the walls vibrate. The scientists shielded their eyes as the beacon transmitted its message out into the cosmos. It was a simple distress signal, the universal call for help, broadcast with power that could theoretically reach across dimensions themselves. Then, silence. The beacon went dark. The scientists waited, instruments ready to detect any response. Minutes passed, then hours. After a full day with no reply, many began to lose hope. Perhaps the furnace zones were empty. Perhaps no one was listening. 3 days after the activation, everything changed. A technician monitoring deep space sensors noticed something impossible. Signatures were appearing at the edge of council space. Not one or two, but hundreds. Ships of unknown design dropping out of faster than light. Travel in perfect formation. The council reconvened an emergency session. Every screen in the chamber showed the same image. 200 massive vessels arranged in a grid pattern. They were not elegant like council ships. These were brutal, functional designs covered in weapons and armor plating. They looked exactly like what they were, warships. "They're transmitting," the communications officer reported, his tentacles shaking with nervousness. "In thousands of languages simultaneously. Our systems are trying to find a match." The chamber watched in tense silence as the computers worked. Finally, one of the languages matched a database entry, an obscure dialect cataloged from a probe that had visited an unremarkable yellow star system decades ago. The transmission translated on every screen. Distress call received. Terran Defense Fleet responding. "What is the nature of your emergency?" Thelrix stared at the message, his compound eyes wide. "Terran? That's from the survey of the Sol system. But that was classified as a death world. Class 12 hazard rating. Nothing should have evolved there capable of space travel." "Apparently," Morellon said quietly, his patterns showing a mix of awe and terror. "Something did." The lead ship, larger than any vessel in the council fleet, moved forward. Another transmission came through. "This is Admiral Tamon of the Terran defense ship Indomitable. We detected your beacon and responded to what we interpreted as a distress signal. Our fleet stands ready to render assistance. Please advise on the nature of the threat you face." In the council chamber, no one spoke. They had called out blindly into the darkness, hoping for salvation. Instead, they had awakened something from a world that should have been impossible. A world of such extreme conditions that it was marked as uninhabitable in every database. And whatever lived on that world had not only survived, they had built an armada. They had traveled across the galaxy in response to a cry for help. They had brought 200 warships and were asking, with what sounded like calm professionalism, how they could assist. Thelrix looked at Morellon, then back at the screens showing those massive weapon-laden vessels. "What have we done?" he whispered, but there was no time for doubt. The swarm was still coming, still consuming worlds. Whatever these humans were, they were here now. The council had asked for help from the furnace zones. Now they would discover what kind of beings were forged in such fire. The diplomatic shuttle approached the human flagship slowly, carefully, as if afraid the massive vessel might suddenly move and crush it. Inside, Ambassador Thelrix tried to control his breathing. Next to him, Morellon's gelatinous body pulsed with anxious colors. 3 other delegates from different species completed their group, and all of them were terrified. The Terran defense ship Indomitable was enormous. It stretched over 2 kilometers in length, its hull covered in weapons that served no purpose other than destruction. The council ships were designed for beauty and efficiency. This was designed for war. The very concept of building something so focused on violence made the delegates uncomfortable. "They're requesting permission to dock," the pilot said, his voice shaking. "They say they've prepared a meeting room for us." "Proceed," Telric said, though every instinct told him to flee. The docking was smooth, controlled by systems far more advanced than anything the Council used. When the airlock opened, the delegates got their first look at humans. 5 of them stood in the docking bay, wearing dark blue uniforms with strange insignia. They were bipedal, roughly 2 meters tall, with forward-facing eyes and skin in various shades of brown and pink. One step forward, and even that simple movement made the delegates flinch. The human moved with a predator's grace, every motion controlled and purposeful. When she smiled, the delegates saw flat teeth in front and sharp ones in back, the teeth of an omnivore, a species that ate both plants and meat. "Welcome aboard," the human said. The translator rendered her words in perfect Valarian. "I'm Commander Hay-1, Executive Officer of this vessel. Admiral Taemin is waiting to meet you. Please, follow me." She turned and walked down the corridor. The delegates followed, their movement systems allowing them to keep pace. But they couldn't help noticing how strong the human looked. Her arms showed defined muscles under the uniform. Her hands, when visible, had thick fingers that could clearly grip and crush. The meeting room was, thankfully, adjusted for them. The gravity was reduced to 1/3 Earth normal, though the delegates didn't know that was still higher than what they preferred. Cushioned surfaces replaced chairs. The temperature was cool and humid. Admiral Taemin was waiting with 3 other humans. He stood when they entered, another simple action that made the aliens nervous. Everything about him suggested controlled power. His gray hair was cut short, military style. His face showed lines from years of command. When he smiled in greeting, it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ambassador Thelrix," he said, bowing slightly. "Thank you for meeting with us. Please, make yourselves comfortable. We have much to discuss." The delegates settled onto their cushions. One of the other humans, a woman with kind eyes, moved forward with a tray. "Would you like refreshment? We synthesized some options based on your biological data." "You have our biological data?" Moralen asked, his pattern showing alarm. "Your distress beacon transmitted on all frequencies," explained another human, a younger male with quick, intelligent eyes. The delegates would later learn his name was Jihu. "We received complete technical specifications, including biological requirements for known council species. Standard protocol when responding to emergencies." "I see," Telric said weakly. The idea that these beings had complete information about council biology was disturbing. But there was no choice now but to continue. "Thank you for responding to our call. Though I admit, we're not entirely sure how you received it." Taemin settled into his chair, an action that looked relaxed, but the delegates could sense the coiled strength in him. "Your beacon transmitted across what we call subspace frequencies. Our deep space monitoring stations detected an anomaly and traced it to your location. When we translated the signal, it appeared to be a standard distress call. We gathered the nearest available fleet and came as quickly as possible." "The nearest available fleet," Moralen repeated. "This is not your full military force?" "No," Taemin said simply. "This is the 3rd Exploration Fleet. We were conducting survey missions in this galactic sector. Our main battle fleets are positioned around Terran space." The implications of that statement hung in the air. 200 warships was just an exploration fleet. The delegates didn't want to imagine what a battle fleet looked like. "Tell us about your enemy," Ha-1 said, pulling up a holographic display. "Your initial transmission mentioned a threat called the Krathis Swarm. What can you tell us about them?" For the next hour, the council delegates explained. They showed footage of swarm attacks, biological analysis, tactical data from failed engagements. The humans watched silently, occasionally asking sharp, Pointed questions that revealed military minds analyzing every detail. One of the humans, a woman introduced as Biora, the chief medical officer, studied the biological scans with growing recognition. These are similar to Terran locusts, she said. Insects that swarm in massive numbers, consuming vegetation and moving on. But scaled up significantly and far more aggressive. Insects? Thelrix asked. What are insects? Biora looked at him with surprise. Small arthropods. Multi-legged creatures that exist in enormous numbers on Earth. Most are harmless, but some species swarm and can devastate ecosystems. Earth has such creatures? Morland's patterns pulsed with shock. And you coexist with them? Well, yes, Dora said, confused by the question. Earth has millions of species. Many are dangerous. We learned to manage them. The last human, a woman named Dae-Yoon who served as a xenobiologist, was reviewing tactical footage. Your engagement strategies are defensive, she observed. You try to minimize damage to swarm vessels while protecting your own. Why? We were attempting to capture specimens for study, Thelrix explained. To find a weakness we could exploit. And our weapons are not designed for wholesale destruction. We build for defense and deterrence. Jihu and Hae-Won exchanged a look. Something passed between them, some shared understanding that made the delegates nervous. Ambassador, Taemin said carefully, I need to understand your expectations. When you sent out that distress call, what kind of help were you hoping for? Military assistance, Thelrix said. Reinforcements to help hold the swarm back while we develop a permanent solution. Perhaps advanced technology or strategic advice. Taemin was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward, his expression serious. I want to be clear about what we're offering. The Terran Defense Fleet does not do half measures. If we engage the Krathis swarm, we will not simply hold them back. We will eliminate them completely. That is how humanity deals with existential threats. Eliminate? Morland's patterns showed confusion. You mean eradicate? Completely destroy their entire species? Yes, Taemin said flatly. From your data, they show no capability for communication or negotiation. They exist only to consume. They are a threat to all intelligent life in this region. Threats like that are removed permanently. The council delegates sat in stunned silence. The casual way the admiral spoke of genocide, though it wasn't really genocide when the target wasn't sapient, was it? Revealed just how different these humans were. They didn't see the swarm as a problem to be managed or a mystery to be solved. They saw it as an enemy to be destroyed. Is that? Thelrix struggled for words. Is that acceptable to you? Destroying an entire species? Ambassador, Hae-Won said gently. In Earth's history, we have faced similar threats. Diseases that killed millions. Predators that hunted us when we were barely more than animals ourselves. Natural disasters that destroyed entire civilizations. We survived by fighting back, by refusing to give up, by doing whatever was necessary. It's not that we want to destroy the swarm. It's that we know hesitation leads to extinction. Yours or theirs. We would prefer it be theirs. Dae-Yoon added, We'll verify everything you've told us. If there's any possibility of communication with the swarm, we'll find it. But if they truly are just a biological weapon consuming everything in their path. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Taemin stood, and the delegates instinctively shrank back. We'll need time to analyze all your data and plan our strategy. But I want you to know, humanity answered your call because that's what we do. We help those who need it. The swarm has killed millions of your people. That ends now. As the delegates were escorted back to their shuttle, Thelrix felt a mix of relief and terror. Relief that such powerful allies had arrived. Terror at what those allies might be capable of. On the Indomitable's bridge, Taemin watched the shuttle depart. Biora stood next to him. "They're so fragile," she said quietly. "Like children playing at civilization." "They are civilized," Taemin corrected. "They've built a society spanning thousands of worlds over 10,000 years. No wars, no violence. It's actually remarkable. Until something violent found them," Jihu observed. "Yes," Taemin agreed. "And now they've called us. God help them. They've called the humans." The war room aboard the Indomitable hummed with activity. Holographic displays showed star charts, swarm movement patterns, and tactical simulations. Commander Hae-1 stood at the center, using hand gestures to manipulate the images. Around her, 24 human officers studied the data with intense focus. In the corner of the room, carefully isolated in a specially modified observation chamber, 3 council delegates watched the planning session. Thelrix, Moralen, and a new addition, Velmora, a young Valarian scientist who volunteered to serve as liaison. They had insisted on observing, wanting to understand how the humans operated. Now they were regretting that decision. "Strike Group Alpha will hit the swarm concentration at Fendra," Hawan explained, highlighting a colony world on the map. 60 ships, standard formation. "Our objective is complete elimination of swarm presence and rescue of any surviving council citizens." "Estimated casualties?" asked a captain whose ship was assigned to the strike group. "For us? Minimal, assuming the swarm hasn't developed new capabilities. Maybe a dozen injuries, possibly 1 or 2 fatalities if we're unlucky." The casual way she discussed potential deaths made Velmora's wings flutter with distress. Among council species, a single death in military operations would lead to weeks of mourning and investigations. The humans discussed it like an acceptable cost of business. "What about acceptable civilian casualties?" another officer asked. "0, Hawan said firmly. "This is a rescue operation as much as a combat mission. We evacuate survivors first, then sterilize the planet of swarm presence." "Sterilize?" Velmora whispered to Thelrix. "What does she mean?" "I don't know," the ambassador replied, "but I don't think I want to." The planning continued. Strike Groups Beta and Gamma received their assignments. Supply lines were established. Evacuation protocols were created. Jihu presented targeting data, identifying swarm weak points. Biora organized medical teams for both human and alien casualties. Dayun prepared analysis equipment to study captured swarm specimens. What disturbed the council observers most was the enthusiasm. The human officers weren't scared. They were excited. They joked with each other, made friendly wagers about who would eliminate the most swarm drones, discussed tactics like athletes planning a game. "They enjoy this," Moralen said, his patterns showing deep confusion. "They find pleasure in the prospect of battle, not pleasure in killing." Dayun's voice came through the observation chamber speakers. She had been monitoring their conversation. "Pleasure in testing ourselves, in protecting others, in doing what we're trained for. It's hard to explain to species that never develop predator psychology." "Predator psychology?" Velmora asked. "Humans evolved as pursuit predators," Dayun explained, stepping closer to the observation window. "We hunted prey across long distances, using endurance and intelligence. That heritage is still part of us. Competition, strategic thinking, the drive to overcome challenges, it's in our nature. We've channeled it into productive forms, but it's still there." "That sounds horrifying," Thelrix said honestly. Dayun smiled sadly. "I suppose it does, from your perspective. But it's also why we're here. Your people evolved on gentle worlds, free from major predators or environmental threats. Ours evolved fighting every day to survive. Different paths, different results." 3 days later, Strike Group Alpha arrived at Fendra. The council delegates watched from the Indomitable's bridge as the human fleet moved into position. The planet below was partially covered in the gray-brown biomass that signified swarm infestation. All ships, this is Commander Hay-1. Her voice rang out across all channels. Rules of engagement. Rescue survivors, eliminate swarm presence, secure the planet. Let's bring our people home. The battle began. To the council observers, it was like watching a natural disaster fight itself. The human ships moved with coordinated precision, targeting swarm vessels with weapons that tore through biomatter like it was paper. Plasma batteries turned swarm drones into ash. Kinetic rounds punched through hive ships with devastating force. But it was when the boarding actions began that the true difference became clear. Dropships deployed from the human vessels, carrying Marines in powered armor. The council delegates watched in real time as these soldiers entered swarm-infested structures. The footage was difficult to watch. Swarm drones, each the size of a small vehicle with razor-sharp mandibles and acid sacs, attacked in waves. The humans fought them hand-to-hand when necessary, their armor enhancing already formidable strength. One Marine, surrounded by 5 drones, literally tore the head off the nearest one and used it as a club against the others. Through it all, the humans were talking to each other. Contact left. 3 drones. I see them, covering you. Medical team, we've got civilians here. Looks like 20 survivors. Ha, that's 8 for me. Jihu owes me dinner. They were joking. While fighting creatures that gave council species nightmares, the humans were laughing and making bets. Ba-Ra led one of the medical teams. The delegates watched as she physically carried 4 Valerian survivors to safety, 1 under each arm and 2 cradled against her chest, while still shooting swarm drones with her free hand. Her armor took multiple hits from swarm acid, but she never stopped moving. She's carrying 4 adults, Valmora whispered in awe. Like they weigh nothing. Low-gravity world evolution, Dayun explained. Your species averages 20 kilograms body weight. To Ba-Ra, that's like carrying 4 house cats. Even in armor, it's trivial. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the swarm presence on Fendra was completely eliminated. Over 3,000 council citizens were rescued. Human casualties, 15 injuries, no fatalities. Swarm casualties, complete eradication. The aftermath was almost worse than the battle. Jihu led a demolition team to the central swarm hive ship, a massive organic structure that served as the regional coordination center. They planted nuclear charges throughout the vessel. Nuclear? Thelric said weakly. They're using atomic weapons? Controlled detonation, Taman explained. He had been standing quietly on the bridge, watching everything. The hive ship is too large to eliminate conventionally. A small fusion device will vaporize it completely. Minimal radiation, maximum effectiveness. But the destruction is necessary, Taman finished. Ambassador, I understand this is difficult for you. Your people don't think this way. But the swarm won't stop because you ask nicely. They won't negotiate or show mercy. The only language they understand is overwhelming force. The hive ship detonated in a brief, brilliant flash. Thousands of tons of swarm biomatter simply ceased to exist. Jihu and his team had evacuated minutes before, laughing and congratulating each other on a job well done. News of the victory spread through council space within hours. The reaction was mixed. Some species celebrated, grateful that the swarm had been stopped. Others were horrified by the brutality of human warfare. Religious factions debated whether humans were divine warriors sent to protect the innocent, or demons that would eventually turn on their allies. On the Indomitable, Valmora requested a private meeting with Dayun. The two met in one of the ship's recreation areas, a space that had been modified for the comfort of council species. I don't understand you, Volmora said bluntly. Your people. You fight like monsters, but you risk yourselves to save our civilians. You destroy without hesitation, but Bara cradled those survivors so gently. You laughed during battle, but I saw human soldiers crying when they found bodies they couldn't save. How can you be both things? The Yoon was quiet for a long moment. Because we're complex. Yes, we're capable of terrible violence. Our history is full of wars, conflicts, atrocities we're not proud of. But we're also capable of incredible compassion. We fight fiercely to protect what we love. We laugh in the face of danger because the alternative is letting fear control us. We cry for the fallen because every life matters. Your world made you this way. Earth is a harsh place by your standards. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, diseases, natural disasters. Early humans died constantly. But those challenges also taught us resilience, cooperation, and determination. We learned that sometimes, to protect the innocent, you have to be willing to be the monster. Velmora's wings fluttered thoughtfully. I think I'm beginning to understand. You're not monsters who occasionally do good things. You're good people who can be monstrous when necessary. That's probably the kindest way anyone's ever described humanity, Dayun said with a genuine smile. Outside the observation window, the human fleet prepared for the next engagement. 50 more worlds were still under swarm threat. The humans would liberate them all, one by one, with the same terrifying efficiency they had shown at Fendra. The Council had called for help from the Furnace Zones. Now they were learning what it meant to be saved by those who were forged in fire. It was glorious and terrifying in equal measure, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war was going well. Too well, Admiral Tamon thought as he studied the tactical reports. In 3 weeks, the human fleet had liberated 27 worlds. Swarm casualties numbered in the millions. Human casualties remained surprisingly light. 200 injured, 14 dead. That was about to change. Admiral, Jihu said urgently, pulling up new sensor data. We're detecting unusual chemical signatures from the swarm vessels in Sector 7. They're producing something new. Dayun joined them at the display, her expression growing serious as she analyzed the data. That's a biological weapon, designed specifically to target oxygen-breathing species with carbon-based proteins. They've adapted to us. How fast can it kill? Taman asked. Minutes. Maybe seconds for direct exposure. Dayun's hands moved rapidly across the display. It attacks the respiratory system and breaks down cellular walls. Extremely lethal. A1 was already running combat simulations. We can modify our armor to filter it, but that will take time. At least a week to update all suits and ship ventilation systems. We don't have a week, Jihu pointed out. Strike Group Delta is engaging a swarm concentration in Sector 7 right now. As if responding to his words, alarms began blaring. Communication came through from the TDS Dauntless, one of the ships in Strike Group Delta. Indomitable, this is Dauntless. We're under attack. They're using some kind of gas weapon. Hull breach on Deck 7. The stuff is getting through our filters. We have casualties. Multiple casualties. Taemin's jaw tightened. All ships in Delta, fall back immediately. Medical teams prepare for chemical exposure treatment. Dayun, I need solutions now. The next hours were chaos. 3 ships from Strike Group Delta were compromised. The swarm, showing unexpected tactical intelligence, used kamikaze tactics, ramming their infected vessels into human ships to spread the toxin. By the time the fleet could respond, 47 humans were dead, over 100 critically injured. The entire human fleet changed. The enthusiasm, the jokes, the casual confidence, it all vanished, replaced by cold, focused anger. The council delegates noticed the shift immediately. "What's happening?" Valmora asked Dayun, who stood at her station with a rigid posture. "Why does everyone seem so different?" "They killed our people," Dayun said quietly. "Not in battle. With a weapon designed to cause maximum suffering." "That's different." "How is it different?" "They've been killing humans all along. Combat deaths are expected. Accepted. This was targeted biological warfare. It crossed a line." That evening, Admiral Taman called a fleet-wide briefing. Every ship captain, every Marine commander, every key officer attended via hologram. The council observers were not invited, but Valmora managed to access the audio feed. "The swarm has escalated," Taman began, his voice like ice. "They've developed weapons specifically to kill humans. They've proven they can adapt to counter our tactics. This is no longer a rescue operation. As of now, I'm authorizing Scorched Earth Protocol." Silence filled the channel. Then Jihu spoke. "Admiral, that protocol requires unanimous command approval." "Are we certain?" "The swarm has shown it will keep evolving until it can kill us efficiently," Taman said. "If we give it time, it will develop more weapons, more tactics. We end this now, completely, with overwhelming force." "All in favor?" One by one, every commander voted yes. The resolution passed unanimously. Valmora didn't understand what the protocol meant until she asked Dayun. The xenobiologist's explanation chilled her to the core. "No prisoners. No mercy. No studying them for science. We burn out every swarm nest, destroy every ship, eliminate every trace. Complete eradication. It's the most extreme military doctrine humanity has." "That's genocide," Valmora whispered. "No," Dayun corrected. "Genocide is eliminating a sapient species. The swarm isn't sapient. It's a biological weapon, a force of nature. This is more like humans eliminating smallpox or polio, diseases that killed millions of us. We don't feel guilty about that, but they're alive. So is cancer. We still cut it out." The fleet's actions became even more brutal. Planets with swarm presence were sterilized from orbit. Hive ships were destroyed on sight, no attempts made to board or study them. The humans moved through swarm territory like a cleansing fire, leaving nothing behind but scorched worlds and drifting debris. But something unexpected happened. Valmora, against all her instincts and training, began to understand the humans better. She spent more time with Dayun, asking questions, trying to bridge the gap between their species. "Why do you help us?" she asked one day. "You could have ignored the beacon, left us to our fate. Why risk your lives for strangers?" Dayun considered the question carefully. "Because that's what good people do. We help those who need it. Yes, we're dangerous. Yes, we're capable of terrible things. But we're also capable of choosing who we protect and what we fight for. We choose to fight for you, even though we're weak, fragile, can't fight alongside you. Strength comes in many forms," Dayun said. "Your people built a civilization that lasted 10,000 years without war. That's a kind of strength humans have never achieved. We respect that, even if we don't fully understand it." The conversation was interrupted by emergency alarms. Commander Han Wan's ship, the TDS Valiant, had been separated from the main fleet and was under heavy swarm attack. The vessel was disabled, engines dead, surrounded by dozens of swarm vessels. "We need a rescue operation," Taman said immediately. "Who can reach them fastest?" Biora stepped forward without hesitation. "I can take a fast assault ship with a medical team. Get in. Extract survivors. Get out." "Too dangerous," Jihu argued. "The swarm will board that ship before you arrive. It'll be a death trap." "Then we better move fast," Biora said grimly. To everyone's shock, Valmora spoke up. I volunteer to go with her. Every human in the room turned to stare at the small Valarian. Absolutely not, Taman said. You're not trained for combat. But I know swarm biology better than anyone, Valmora insisted. I've been studying your data, combining it with council research. I can identify the safest routes through infested areas, predict their movement patterns. You need me. Bayara studied the young alien. She's right. And we need every advantage we can get. Against his better judgment, Taman approved the mission. 1 hour later, Baora and Valmora were aboard a fast assault ship racing toward the Valiant. The ship also carried a dozen Marines, all volunteers. The Valiant was a nightmare. Swarm drones had breached the hull in multiple locations. The Marines fought through them, creating a path for Baora and Valmora to reach the survivors. The Valarian scientist, wearing a specially modified suit, guided them through maintenance tunnels that the swarm hadn't discovered yet. Left here, Valmora directed, her voice shaking but determined. The drones prefer main corridors. They're drawn to airflow. They found Commander Hay-1 and 60 crew members barricaded in the engineering section. The humans had been fighting for hours, using improvised weapons and sheer determination. Hay-1 herself was injured, her left arm badly burned from a swarm acid spray. You actually came, Hay-1 said with a pained smile as Biora began treating her wound. I thought we were done for. Never leave people behind, Biora said firmly. That's the rule. As they prepared to evacuate, Valmora noticed something on her scanner. There's a massive organic structure 3 decks down. It's generating unusual electromagnetic patterns. A hive node, one of the Marines said, coordinates the local swarm forces. Valmora studied the readings more carefully. If we destroy it, we don't kill the swarm, but we fragment their coordination. They become less organized, easier to fight. A1 looked at Baora. We should take it out. We should get you to safety, Baora countered. We're already here. And if that node coordinates swarm forces in this entire sector, destroying it could save thousands of lives. Human and council. A1 winced as she stood. Let's finish this. Valmora led them to the node. It was massive, a pulsing organic computer the size of a small vehicle. The Marines planted explosives while Baora kept watch. Swarm drones were closing in from all directions. 30 seconds. One Marine called out. We'll never make it back to the ship in time, another said calmly. Yes, we will, Baora said. Valmora, can you fly? Aye. My wings are designed for low-gravity environments, but good enough. Baora grabbed Hay-1, while other Marines grabbed their wounded. On my mark, we run. They ran. Behind them, the explosives detonated, destroying the node and sending a shockwave through the ship. The swarm drones fell into disarray, their coordinated attacks dissolving into chaos. The rescue team made it to their ship with seconds to spare. Back on the Indomitable, Valmora was treated as a hero. The humans thanked her, congratulated her, treated her as one of their own. She had proven that council species could contribute to the war effort, even if they couldn't match human physical capabilities. Dayun found her later, resting in the modified quarters. You did well today. I was terrified the entire time, Valmora admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. Dayun smiled. You've learned something humans know well. Sometimes, to protect others, you have to face your nightmares. Valmora S-wings fluttered thoughtfully. I think I'm starting to understand your people. You're not monsters. You're just willing to become monsters when the situation demands it. And the war had been going on for 2 months. 48 worlds liberated. Swarm numbers reduced by 60%. But the cost was mounting. Human casualties now numbered over 4,000. The council species, inspired by Velmora's example, had started contributing what they could: medical support, logistics, intelligence analysis. It wasn't much compared to human military might, but it mattered. Then the swarm made its final, desperate move. "Admiral." Jihu's voice was urgent. "Massive swarm concentration detected. They're gathering near the Villar system. That's the council's capital." Taemin studied the tactical display. Thousands of swarm vessels, more than they had seen in any single location. They're making a final push. Everything they have left, targeting the council homeworld. "Can we stop them?" Haewon asked. "We have to." Taemin began issuing orders. "Recall all strike groups. Every available ship converges on Villar. Send word to the council. Begin evacuations immediately." Throughout council space, the call went out. The swarm was coming in numbers that darkened the stars. Every human vessel raced toward Villar, but would they arrive in time? On Villar Prime, panic spread. Thelrix coordinated evacuations, but there were billions of council citizens on the planet. They couldn't evacuate them all. Then, something unexpected happened. A message came through on all council frequencies. It was from Velmora. "People of the council, this is Velmora. I know you're afraid. I was too, but I've spent 2 months with the humans. I fought alongside them. I've seen what they're willing to do to protect us. They're coming. Have faith." She wasn't alone. Other council members who had been working with the human fleet sent similar messages. Scientists, medical staff, logistics coordinators, all speaking about human determination, human courage, human refusal to abandon those they'd sworn to protect. The messages helped, but fear still gripped the population. The swarm was coming, and even with human help, the odds seemed impossible. The human fleet arrived first, taking up defensive positions around Villar. 200 ships against thousands of swarm vessels. The humans didn't flinch. They had faced worse odds before, though none of them would admit how bad this looked. But they weren't alone. Dozens of council ships appeared, requesting permission to join the defense. They were equipped with human weapons now, crude installations, but functional. Their crews were volunteers, trained hastily in combat procedures by human advisors. Velmora commanded one of these ships, the Unity. Her crew was mixed, council species and a few human advisors. They weren't strong enough to fight the swarm directly, but they could support the human fleet, provide sensor data, and target weak points that Velmora's research had identified. "All ships." Taemin's voice rang out across the fleet. "This is what we came here to do." The council called for help, and humanity answered. "Today, we show the swarm what happens when they threaten those under our protection. Today, we show the galaxy what humans are capable of. All ships, engage at will." The battle began. It was chaos on a scale the council species had never witnessed. Human ships tore through swarm formations with brutal efficiency. Plasma weapons lit up the darkness. Kinetic rounds punched through biomatter. Nuclear missiles turned hive ships into expanding clouds of vapor. But the swarm had numbers. For every vessel destroyed, 2 more appeared. Human ships began taking heavy damage. The TDS Dauntless exploded, taking out 3 swarm vessels in its death throes. The TDS Pathfinder lost engines and drifted helplessly until a marine detachment manually piloted it into a swarm concentration, detonating the reactor. On the Unity, Velmora coordinated with other council ships, directing human fire to maximum effect. Her knowledge of swarm biology let her predict their movements, identify critical targets. The council ships weren't warriors, but they made excellent tactical support. "Large swarm vessel approaching the Indomitable," one of her crew called out. "It's massive, bigger than anything we've seen." Jihu confirmed it from the Indomitable's bridge. "That's the swarm's central hive ship. the Queen vessel. If we destroy it, we fragment their entire command structure. Then that's our target, Taman said. All remaining ships converge on that vessel. We end this now. But the hive ship was protected by hundreds of drones. The human fleet fought toward it, taking casualties with every meter gained. The Indomitable itself was badly damaged, hull breaches on multiple decks, weapon systems failing. "Admiral, we can't reach it," Hawan reported. "We don't have enough firepower left." Taman looked at the tactical display, then at his crew. They were exhausted, wounded, but still fighting. He had asked everything of them, and they had given it. But it wasn't enough. "Ram it," he said quietly. "Sir?" Jihu looked shocked. "Set course to ram the hive ship. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to other vessels. Transfer command to the Valiant. We're taking that thing down." "Admiral, no," Bedora protested. "We can find another way." "There is no other way," Taman said firmly. "That ship has to be destroyed, or the swarm will never stop. Sometimes, the only option is sacrifice." He began issuing evacuation orders. Most of the crew transferred to other ships, but many refused to leave. "We're staying," they said. "If you're doing this, we're with you." The Indomitable turned toward the hive ship, engines burning at maximum. Swarm drones swarmed around it, tearing at the hull, but the massive vessel kept moving. Inside, Taman sat in his command chair, watching the distance close. Then Velmora's voice came through. "Admiral, wait. I'm detecting something. The hive ship has a critical vulnerability, a central nerve cluster near its core. If we hit it precisely, we can kill the entire organism without destroying the ship." "How precisely?" Jihu asked. "Within 2 meters. And it's deep inside, protected by layers of biomatter. We can't get a missile through that," Haywan said. "No," Velmora agreed. "But I can," she explained quickly. Her ship was small, fast, and equipped with human weapons. If she could get inside the hive ship through one of its many openings, navigate to the nerve cluster, and detonate a warhead directly against it, the entire organism would die. "It's a suicide mission," Taman said bluntly. "You'll never make it out." "I know," Velmora said calmly. "But it's my choice. You've been making sacrifices for us since you arrived. Let us return the favor." Dayun's voice came through, urgent. "Velmora, you don't have to do this. We'll find another way." "There is no other way," Velmora echoed Taman's earlier words. "And I'm not afraid anymore. You taught me that courage means acting despite fear. Thank you for that lesson." Before anyone could stop her, the Unity broke formation and accelerated toward the hive ship. Her crew, all volunteers, stayed with her. They knew what they were choosing. The small ship dodged through swarm defenses, taking hits but maintaining course. It disappeared into one of the hive ship's intake ports. Communications became garbled as Velmora navigated through organic corridors, using her knowledge of swarm biology to find the nerve cluster. "I've reached it," her voice crackled through. "Planting charges now. Tell Dayun. Tell her she was right. Strength comes in many forms. Tell my people. Tell them not to be afraid anymore. We're stronger than we knew." "Velmora," the Yun started, but the transmission cut out. The hive ship convulsed. Internal explosions rippled through its massive structure. The swarm drones around it fell into chaos, their coordination shattered. The giant vessel began to tear itself apart from the inside. The human fleet and remaining council ships pulled back as the hive ship collapsed. Without its coordinating intelligence, the swarm forces broke apart. The drones fought now on instinct, mindless and uncoordinated. The human fleet methodically eliminated them over the next hours. When it was over, Veer was safe. The swarm was destroyed. But the cost was devastating. 70 human ships lost. Over 4,000 humans dead. And Velmora, the young Valorian scientist who had bridged two civilizations, was gone. 3 months later, a memorial service was held on Valor Prime. Humans and council species gathered together, no longer as strangers, but as allies. A monument was erected listing every name, human and council, who had died in the war. Admiral HFY, promoted after Taman's death, gave the keynote speech. Her words were translated into every council language. "We came here as strangers," she said, "called by a beacon you sent into the darkness. We didn't know you. You didn't know us. But we came anyway, because that's what humanity does. We help those who need it. You were afraid of us at first. We understood why. We are Deathworlders, forged in conditions you consider hellish. We're capable of terrible violence. But you learned something important. We're also capable of choosing who we protect and what we fight for. We chose to fight for you, and you taught us something too. That strength isn't just about physical power or military might. It's about 10,000 years of peace. It's about building civilizations based on cooperation instead of conquest. It's about a young scientist finding courage she never knew she had. You showed us that our way isn't the only way, and that your way has value we're only beginning to understand." She paused, looking at the monument. "Today, we sign a treaty. Humanity joins the Galactic Council, not as conquerors, but as protectors.